What's going on, everybody? It's K4K Crypto. We just broke 1,000 subscribers today. Super psyched about that. Um, Funding Jim's been saying nice things. He's in my new Telegram channel for game theory. We're talking about cool stuff in there. Came up with some ideas, even for this video in there. So if you want to check that out, check the description. This video is going to be about PulseX sacrifice strategy. And I made this little slideshow so you guys can like follow along. You guys actually chose this. People who are watching me on Twitter chose to. Oh, don't want to get there yet. You guys voted overwhelmingly, wanted this to be the next topic I talked about, so I put this in the video. I'm probably not even going to make the how to use testnet video unless like people really want to learn that stuff or if something really interesting comes out. So we're most likely gonna have a different type of video after this one that's not on this list. So be looking for those polls and then you can check out this. You get to decide what these videos are made of. So now this is a cool site. If you go to easyhex.xyz, you can actually check out this potential logo for PulseX. Just got dropped like 10 minutes before I made this video, so it's like, all right, I'm gonna include it in my video. That's pretty cool. But you can't actually sacrifice. Don't like send money here or anything. It tells you like it's not determined and stuff. And the website will be announced. I think it says like it's pulsex.info is where the sacrifice address will be. So don't do anything. This is just for like branding and questions. It might have some extra info. I'll check it out more later. But let's get to the info. Oh, let's go back. Check out that awesome. Check it out. PulseX. Alright, so this is going to be about kind of like some strategies to do before the sacrifice phase and a little bit afterwards, and even a little like medium to long term strategy. So there are many different strategies, but it's important to keep in mind you got to be happy with whatever choice you go with. It's your own decision, and you can't be upset because you are so early to the best projects in the best asset class in history. It's like, oh, I didn't make an extra 100x like or something on this one opportunity. It's like there's so many opportunities you miss, but you guys are in the best one right now. It doesn't have to be played perfectly, and you're going to do well. Now, this is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor, so do not send anything with a lawyer to my house. Appreciate it. So I'm going to go over 3 main strategies. Now, a lot of people are like, well, why isn't there just one best strategy? Well, I thought about it because I was trying to like figure out what is the just optimal, best possible strategy. And I just don't think that there's a one size fits all because everyone's situation is different. Some people missed the pulse sacrifice, so they're in a totally different boat than people who already did the sacrifice and they're like, well, I'm happy with my pulse allocation, so I only need to know what to do with the rest of my money. So I got a bunch of different ideas to throw out there for people, and you can kind of like mold it to your own plan that works best for you. It's not like definitely do this. If you don't do this, you'll miss out hugely. It's just from my thoughts and my ideas about kind of how I'm approaching it. So, and some people are more risk averse, even in crypto. So they don't want to go for a strategy that's high risk, even if it does mean potentially high reward. Because all crypto is like already high risk, high reward. And so you're just, some people don't like extremely high risk and then extremely high reward. It's like you're already making insane gains. Don't risk it. I guess some people are risk averse. So these are all potentialities and not guarantees. I'm not saying this will happen, or if this doesn't happen, then you can come back and like smack me around or something. But these are just potentials based on the information we have so far. And as I say in the next line, with the release of the new information on PulseX parameters, which we don't have yet, like we don't know any of the emission rates or the pools, like what are the pairs. That's super important stuff that can actually impact a lot. There may be even new mechanics we don't know about at all, and that could be huge. We can know what stuff they cut from PancakeSwap. Like we don't know what they cut, what they kept. We don't know. So that could cause a drastic jump in potential valuation or devaluation, depending on how you look at it. So let's start off with some general stuff. I think sacrificing in general is just good for price appreciation, like as a distribution model. Oh my gosh, I'm too big on the screen. Oh, there we go. So Richard learned from his initial, the first way he released Hex was with this adoption amplifier system, and basically it released some of the supply and allowed people to like claim and get it for free a certain way. By holding Bitcoin, they could claim it and reduce how much everyone got, but like almost no one claimed. It didn't work that well. It was kind of clunky. I mean, of course, we got adoption and we're here now at 10,000x, but I think he's learned. And well, one of the problems with that was like first day it was 1 billion hex out, like on the first day. And then the next day it was 550 million hex. Now available for supply. Then the next day was another 500 million. And then 500 million. And then 500 million. And then 500 million. It was like huge supply because you started at 1 billion at like the first day. And so you just like increased it by 50% in like the next day. It's like, well, I guess like 33%. But yeah, or 50%. It was huge amounts, and so even so, Hex did extremely well. But we'll get to that. But obviously, he learned from that first token distribution model, and now he knows what's good and what was bad from for price from that model. I think he's even said in some talks that like, talking about how much it was inflating it. That's just a lot of coins to be adding to supply. So I think he's come up with this sacrifice model after lots and lots and lots of thinking. Which even though we're having a second one, we still have not seen the effect it will have on price. It hasn't been tested, so we don't know if it will actually do worse. But I think Richard iterates and makes things better in general, as opposed to changing things and making it suckier. So I think it's going to perform better than the first year of Hex launch. For both of these tokens that had the sacrifice set, because there won't be those huge supply coming onto market like in the adoption amplifier. So imagine a Richard Hart project where the supply, like in Pulse's case, is actually deflationary from the start, as opposed to Hex, which was hyperinflationary. Now Hex has its benefits where it was like removing supply quickly just based on its game theory, where people were locking it up and that's removing supply, and there was a lot of demand. So it had its way to counteract it. Like inflation's not bad. Like Bitcoin went up 6.9 million x, and it's been inflationary this whole time and started off hyperinflationary. So it's not like, oh, inflationary, it won't do well at all. No. So my thinking is he made it this way, so it should be more price performative. It's kind of like a decentralized way of allowing anyone with a wallet to become like a venture capitalist in his projects. He doesn't need VC money because he has hundreds of thousands of people who now have the ability to get equity in Richard Hart's decentralized company. Now, I've never heard anyone like kind of talk about this, but that's kind of how I picture Richard Hart projects. And he talked about way back before he ever created Bitcoin Hex, whenever it was back and called Bitcoin Hex. He talked about people having like equity in his kind of, not company, he didn't say that, but he said like equity in his projects and stuff. And he's run several companies. He's, held shares in companies and other companies. And so when he says equity, he looks at this and he basically found a way, for legal reasons, but it's also kind of just like an improved version that opens up the ability to get into projects and companies earlier in a decentralized way, so like anyone can get in. You're not locked behind, oh, you're not an accredited investor, you don't know how to use your money. Like, what are you doing? Why can't I use my money how I want? This isn't free speech. Well, Richard's all about free speech and allowing people like us, who, you have some money, you want to invest it, you can invest it. That's what we should be allowed to do. Well, Richard found a way for us to basically invest in a decentralized company that he runs. He probably doesn't like that for legal reasons, but that's kind of how I look at it. It's not really. It's not actually a company. It's not run by just one guy. It's decentralized. It's like a new thing. It's not just run by him, but he is at the forefront of like making awesome new products that people have the ability to get into. But you can think about it in that one framework if that makes more sense for you, for how this whole ship is being driven. And the products him and his team create are better than anything else on the market. And if you're able to get share in that decentralized company that he's created by creating these awesome tokenomically enhanced game theory tokens, you can just look at the chart and see how we're outperforming everything else. And that's because we're able to get in to the best projects as early as possible, which has never been really done before. Because usually you have to do KYC, AML to get into these like seed rounds, and you have to already know everybody who's in that circle who to even get asked to join that seed round and stuff like that. It's crazy, but Richard found a way to actually give power to the people and join these projects. So kudos to him. So we're going to talk about, Hex's first year and second year, and then I'll explain why that's important. So we have even more clout and awareness now than, back then, like 2 years ago. So more people with more money are aware of this project, and more people, like, we actually have more respect now. And it's not Hex, so people who are outside of the Hex community will see Pulse, and it's gonna be doing so well because so many more people know about it, and there's a huge following behind it. I just don't see how this thing isn't gonna rocket at the start. And all that awareness is just more than we had back then. So we have the better launch model. We have more awareness. The biggest airdrop and free yield, in quotes, to be made in the PulseX exchange. So this huge volume actually creates buy and burn pressure for PulseX based on PancakeSwap's code, which they forked it from. So any volume on any pair in PulseX, including those pairs that are like eHex and Hex, and everyone down the list, all 10,000, all of those pairs that people are going to be arbing back and forth constantly all day, every day, all of that volume is going to be paying, and it's going to be basically forcing the contract to buy up millions of dollars worth of PulseX and then burning it from supply. So people worried about it being like hyperinflationary and it's gonna, like, they think PulseX is gonna do poorly. I think they're wrong. Partly because of the launch mechanism, like distribution of PulseX, where they're setting the base floor, and just the game mechanic of all the volume on the system is purchasing it. And there's way more other stuff too. We'll get into it. So Hex had high inflation year one, and it still did 383x. You can check the chart. This is on Uniswap V1. I measured from the bottom, and then to the top of that year over there. So it's more like a year and a month. But so even if PulseX has high inflation, which it most likely will, not like extremely high, but you'll see, it won't be nearly as bad as Hex's was, because Hex was like, oh, we're just gonna every day increase the supply. But like, first day is 50%, next day is like, I don't know. It did go down technically versus everything else, because like the pool kept getting bigger, so it was less. I guess it's like a function how much it was losing each day, inflation percent wise, but it was still huge amounts each day just added to the supply, and you're like, oh my gosh, another day they're adding 500 million. like but anyway, so it won't be nearly as bad as Hex's was, and it's going to have automatic buy pressure that burns the tokens, reducing supply. Hex never had automatic buying pressure. But what it did have was huge supply sinks, staking, reducing available supply. And so PulseX also has that feature on top of the buyback and burn. You're like, oh, how does it have that? Well, PulseX, with its compounding pools, where you just stake PulseX and you get more PulseX. It's just given to you per block for staking in the pool. On PancakeSwap, currently, 80% of the total supply is put in that pool, and that is what the supply is being used for. Because why would you sell the thing that you can just make more with if you keep it as a money printer? It's kind of similar to Hex. I said this in another video. It just doesn't have the time lock aspect, but still, it's a money printer, and if you don't sell, like every Hexagon knows this, if you don't sell your principal, it's just free yield. Like, the price doesn't matter. So that's pretty cool. And having that allocation immediately by buying PulseX sacrifice means you don't have to yield farm to get it first in order to get into the single staking pool. Very important. No impermanent loss for you. Not going to get into impermanent loss in this video. Now, in Hex's second year, it did 157x. So it's making less X over time. Diminishing returns. Now, if Hex gets over $1 by a bit in the next few days, it could beat its first year. So pray for that. If it happens, awesome. You know, it's not impossible for something to, like, we could be still reaching like X, like we're still pre-viral. So we could make more next year. It's not like we're only going to go down. It's just that it's harder to move the market because the liquidity goes up with like the value of Hex going up. It increases the liquidity in the pool. We need more money to push it up. But Hex is designed so well that like no one is incentivized to provide liquidity because you can just stake the Hex instead, which means it's not in liquidity, which means there's low liquidity. And so the price can go up very high, very fast with very little money. Very genius design. So Hex is not like out of this race just because it's 2 years old. So don't think I'm saying that. So we got diminishing returns. So even a Richard Hart project as good as Hex will most likely eventually have diminishing returns over time. We kind of saw that this year. It did less than its first year. Next year could be different if we go viral. But in general, if you don't go viral, you get less over time. So this is important before coming to the strategies. Strategy 1. I figure everyone wants to start with the high risk, high reward, you degenerates out there. So buying the Hex dip now, it will most likely appreciate into the weeks leading to the sacrifice, just like last time. It happened last time. We went up big time, like 5x. Well, I mean, it was actually like way back before the sacrifice phase, and then it really ramped up. But I wouldn't be surprised if we got closer to all-time highs by the time sac phase actually starts, because the whales have incentive to push this price up really high. They sacrifice, and then they don't care what the price happens, because they get to use that infinite liquidity to capitalize, like to actually take profits from their Hex gains without hurting Hex price at all when they sacrifice. When you sacrifice Hex, it effectively removes it from supply, and so it isn't being sold by the address that is given to. So that's really good for Hex price long term, removing supply pretty much permanently, unless the OA decides to sell it, which I don't think they will. And you're able to lock in those Hex gains without hurting the Hex price. Most likely to go up before sacrifice. So, step 2. You've increased your USD value for the sacrifice, and now can sacrifice it, effectively removing it from circulation, getting PulseX allocation without harming Hex price. Alright, I said that already. I think something new from Richard Hart will outperform Hex in the short term, like 0 to 3 years. This is why sacrificing all of this Hex for PulseX nets you the best chance of outpacing Hex and being able to rebuy your sack amount, like the amount of Hex that you sacrificed. Once you've done 2x whatever Hex has, you could get all your Hex back if you wanted to. That's kind of like hedging your bets a little early, I think, there. All right. You can rebuy your sack amount or more in the near term. Yep. So you can dollar cost average once the fork happens into Pulse as much as you like from launch onward. So if you see that the ratio, you can get a lot of Pulse for your PulseX because it's really high and you think the ratio is going to, come back down, then maybe that's when you start dollar cost averaging and buying some Pulse with your stuff if you want to have Pulse exposure. Now, you might be wondering, well, oh, why are you leaving it up to me to think about it? Because I don't know how to value things. Well, we don't have enough information, basically, that I'm comfortable saying will Pulse or PulseX do better. So I'm not going to tell you that just hold PulseX the whole time or Pulse or 50-50. I think 50-50 is kind of safer just in case one underperforms and one overperforms. But I am comfortable saying that I think PulseX and Pulse will outperform Hex in the near term. And so it's like Richard says, if you like Bitcoin, you could have bought Hex and had 1,000x your Bitcoin if you just bought Hex instead with that. Well, I think that's the same logic you can use for if you want more Hex, you can basically leverage the fact that Hex is a bit older and you can get in on the ground floor on a new Richard Hart project. And you can use those insanely quick, fast gains to rebuy your Hex position or more if your long-term goal is to hold a lot of Hex and stake it long-term. I do think long-term Hex kind of just kicks the crap out of everything out there. So if you want to get back into your Hex allocation so you can start staking and having a good T-share rate, then you can do that. I do think for the first year or two, unless Hex goes viral and just hits its biggest spike yet, we may, especially with the bear market potentially around the corner, maybe Hex overperforms. We'll see. We haven't seen Hex in a starting of a bear market. Anyway. So yeah, I don't want to say PulseX will outperform Pulse or anything. So get as much as you want with your PulseX at launch whenever it comes out. And let's see here. And don't get back into Hex until you feel you've gotten enough gains back or you want to hold Hex or something. And you can also just wait for a Hex dip. Now all these things before you start dollar cost averaging back into Hex with your gains. The thing is, I think most of these will probably run in correlation with each other, so it's going to be hard to be oh, PulseX is 10x the performance of all these other ones. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think they're all going to kind of rise together, and so they're all going to have a ratio to each other, and so you might want to watch those charts to get an idea of where they're going. Well, we might do some of that whenever it comes out and there's all these coins to check out and see what's the best time to get each one. We'll do that in another video. So it is a gamble on how long you want to wait to reacquire your Hex, because like I said, if we do start going viral with Hex, it could be bad to be not sitting in Hex. So if you see a lot of you see CNBC and people talking about it and it's legal tender, then maybe get some maybe that's super bullish. But anyway, in conclusion, something brand new from Richard has so much more room to grow at a faster rate than even his first amazing project in the early days. So leverage that to get yourself the largest potential return quickly in order to get more pulse allocation if desired and recoup your Hex sacrifice amount. So that's the high risk, high reward, because you're kind of betting on PulseX doing extremely well because it's a new project and it has better launch mechanics than Hex did, and it did 383x, and it has a huge supply sink. So people are going to want to hold this and make yield just like people hold Hex and make yield. Don't sell the principal. You can just make the easiest yield of your life. And I'm pretty sure that the yield, like the APY in the pool, is actually it's APY on how much of the coins you're going to get. So like if it's like 100% APY, you're actually going to double your coins in that time, in like a year or whatever. But those coins are also appreciating at an insanely high rate. And so it's kind of like Hex where you have to multiply your USD gains by how many coins you made in interest, and that's your actual total amount of return. So don't get fooled by lower looking APYs. It's still better than pulse delegating, in my opinion, will be, because you're just making such, even though there's lots more transactions, you're making like this much pulse like a transaction, and eventually at a higher price, maybe those little amounts will add up to something. But early on, for the first year or so, it's going to be like it's still yield. So do it if you have pulse, but I think it's better to hold PulseX and make real yield real fast early on whenever there's a lot of hype around it, lots of volume starting out. So kind of a PulseX bull if you haven't noticed. All right, strategy 2. The fully hedged for all projects, I call it. So this one, you also buy Hex in the dip, most likely appreciates into the weeks leading to the sacrifice. We talked about that. You sacrifice 1/3 of your Hex for PulseX in the sacrifice, and wait for the fork to get your copied Hex on and your PulseX. Then you stake, and this is going to give you basically this is going to give you the kind of, you're holding a good equal-ish amount of all projects, and you're utilizing all the benefits from each project. So if that interests you, you may not get the highest of highs, but you won't see the lowest of lows with this strategy. You're kind of just like, you'll be up a bit one day, and then you'll be down a little bit one day. Whereas the other strategy will be, holy crap, I've made so much money, this is insane, and then one day it'll be like, oh, this is horrible. I have to watch all these other coins going up and mine's not doing anything. Because there'll be times when like PulseX won't be moving, but Hex will. PulseX won't be moving, but Pulse will. And the reverse is true. Like Pulse and Hex could be doing nothing, and PulseX is mooning like it's beating everything. And so if you're only holding PulseX and it's mooning, then you're crushing everybody else, and you can buy more allocation of those other coins before yours corrects. So, but this one is for the people who want to have that all around, and you're not, like, these things are going to appreciate insanely well. Like, I think this is kind of just the most well-rounded, best strategy for most people. The other one is kind of like, you really think PulseX is going to do well, and you want to buy a lot more Hex whenever the strategy is complete. I think that is kind of like high risk, high reward. This one's for the people who want to like do everything with Pulsechain with the Richard Hart project, and you won't miss out on any little pump. You're going to be a part of everything. So let's get to it. So what you do, step 3, you stake PulseX in the single stake pool, earning yield, and it's appreciating fast. You can decide what you want to do. You can shave off that yield and dollar cost average into the other projects. You want to lose your PulseX exposure and you want to keep it kind of the same, then you can do that. Or you can just let it compound and build and build and build, and then it's making more. Anyway, so you now have, this sounds silly, but you now have 4/3 your original stack of eHex and your copied Hex, because remember you had 2/3 of your Hex left because you only sacrificed 1/3 before the fork. So then you have your 2/3 eHex, and then you have your 2/3 pHex. We'll just call it Hex over there and eHex. And so I would say step 5, you trade 1/3 of your eHex because it's going to have all of its value. I don't think immediately we're going to have parity unless Richard or the AOA or whatever does something crazy with the bonding pool and puts like a billion hex and then a billion. Well, not they wouldn't need a billion because it's not a dollar, but an equal amount of the. Oh yeah, well no. What I'm saying is they would have a billion E hex and a billion hex. If the OA decides to do that, they are bonded and they have to have the same value after all the arbing is done. So it might bring them both down. It might bring them kind of both up to like a middle. Anyway, so I don't think that's actually going to happen. It could be like a big surprise. It's like, oh, boom, they're both equal. Get wrecked. No one can stop it now. But anyway, you trade only 1/3 of your E hex for Pulse because it has like the most value compared to P hex currently. And then you get as much Pulse as you want with that 1/3, or if you want a different allocation amount, it's up to you. It's not like you have to do these hard numbers. Then you delegate your Pulse that you got, because why not make yield on it? I don't think it's smart to put your Pulse in any sort of yield farm, even though that's like part of the thing. A lot of people do that, but they don't understand impermanent loss. We do on this channel. So you don't want to put your Pulse in any unless there's like some single staking pool for it. See, we don't know some of these details, but most likely you don't want to be in a liquidity pair yield farming because you're gonna lose out on so much because of impermanent loss. So just delegate your Pulse. That way you're getting part of that deal, which is pretty cool. Then you should yield farm with your hexes as much as you can. So put that 1/3 of E hex that you bridged over in with the pair of your P hex. So whenever you supply liquidity in like a Uniswap V2 type thing, the dollar amounts have to be equal. So if your E hex is worth $1,000 and your P hex is worth 400, well, you can only put $400 of your $1,000 worth of hex on this side with your $400 worth of PX into the pool. And then that excess ETH you have, or that not ETH, E hex, you can just stake that like you normally would. So you're basically earning, you got the single stake PulseX earning you more PulseX. Awesome. You have Pulse with 1/3 of your original like monetary value you started with stack. That's how much Pulse you have from launch. Then you're delegating your Pulse and you're earning more Pulse with your Pulse. You're yield farming with both your hexes in PulseX, which is giving you more PulseX for no risk, basically, because you got that P hex or hex on Pulse for free. So that's pretty cool. You didn't have to buy the other half. That's awesome. And so you're getting that. And on top of that, you can also stake whatever excess hex you have, and you're getting hex interest. You're getting, I think, 2 different PulseX like yields. You're getting 2 of those, and your Pulse is making you more Pulse. Awesome. In conclusion, this doesn't risk as much on PulseX performing because you have less exposure to it. You only went in with 1/3. But it does give you exposure to each token in the ecosystem. You'd hate to see Richard tweeting all 4 awesome charts and you're only holding the one that's underperforming. It might be for only a short time and then you get back to the mean. But if you're not ready to handle that risk of having to see Richard post those charts and yours isn't the one doing so hot, then you'll miss out on potentially missing. Well, I mean, then this strategy is more for you if you don't think you can handle looking at that. But if you want to take the more risky approach, it could pay off bigly. So this protects you from if Pulse underperforms, you'll be doing better. Now for the third strategy, I think you guys are going to like it. All right, so for the third strategy, you can be poor. No. Your strategy is to be poor. Follow these steps. Don't buy Hex in the dip, because you don't want more value before the sacrifice phase. Hold only Ethereum before the fork. You want to be poor. Make sure you get diluted 1.2 million X. I enjoyed myself too much. All right. Step 3. Skip the sacrifice phase because you didn't do your research. Good. This is for this strategy to be true. I agree with those first 3 so much. All right. After launch, after the fork, complain on Twitter that you only got 1 pulse per ETH in your wallet. Step 5. Watch everyone around you get risk-free yield in PulseX bonding pairs and staking pools instead of participating. And that is how you can be poor. In conclusion, you're broke, okay? So those are my 3 strategies. I hope you guys enjoyed that. More content coming. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. I got a cool background to show you guys just for fun before we end it. You know, I'm not bearish on Hex. Look, I got this. See you at $1, guys. We're gonna make it. We got it's deal or no deal. We got it. And then I got one more video because it's kind of fun. I love this one. We're already on the moon. People are just discovering it. They don't understand. Anyway. All right. Peace out, everybody. Thanks for watching. Check out my game theory Telegram. Check the description. Follow me on Twitter, K4K Crypto. Oh yeah, I revealed my name today. Hi, I'm Colton. You guys can call me Colton. Starts with a K. K4K. Originally, it stood for K for Colton because I always tell people, like, when I meet them, my name's Colton, of course, and then I say it starts with a K. You know, most Coltons start with a C, so I start with a K. That was pretty cool. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.